Compost is the lifeblood of any garden, and when you can make your own nutrient-dense compost at home, you're in total control of your own garden's soil fertility. Now, I made this compost in 10 weeks, and in this episode I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. I'm Tony O'Neill and this is UK Here We Grow, and on this channel we deal with all things gardening, poultry keeping and beekeeping. If you want that perfect garden to relax in, or just want to grow your own nutrient dense foods, then start now by clicking the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified each time I release new content just like this. As gardeners, we all know we should be composting our waste, and in the garden this has a number of advantages. It allows us to dispose of all the green matter that we create within our gardens, and it helps us to create fertility in our soils, which allows for better crops year after year. 10 weeks ago I made a video called How to Make Compost, Composting Processes, Composting Methods, and in that video you saw me covering up a whole bin full of compost. Well, this is that compost here. I've literally just turned it once from the end bin where it was into this bin, and this is how it is 10 weeks later. You could practically use this as a mulch already. As you see, this is pretty much nearly finished breaking down, and the volume of compost has over half the amount when it was in this bin full here. We've only turned it the once, and as you can see, it's a nice dark brown colour, which shows you the quality of the compost and shows you how nutrient dense it is. It's ready now to mulch all sorts of plants, and it would be perfect as a mulch. But I'm going to turn this once again back into the original bin where it came from and allow it to sit there until I need it in spring. Now that this bay is available, I'm going to make a new batch of compost. Hundreds of you have asked on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and here on YouTube how I make my piles. So that's what we're going to do now. Over the last week, since the video where I showed you about the state of the garden after the 8-week break I had, then all of that waste is now here. I've cleaned up the garden in the last week and everything is here. So I've been storing greens, as you can see here, and we've already had browns stored. So we've got everything that we need in order to make compost. So we're going to get on with it. Now, the idea behind making compost is that we create layers of greens and browns. Okay, so when creating our compost pile, we need to create layers of greens and browns, and we need to layer them in the compost heap as we build it. Now, we also need to consider about the size of everything that we're putting in, because the smaller that we can shred it, the better for the compost. It'll break down much quicker, because if you just chuck it in whole like this, then you're going to have issues later on when it comes to break down. It will delay the whole process. You can use a shredder in order to shred this stuff down to a small size, but if you don't have electricity, even a shears would work really well. Just put the stuff into a bucket and shear away. And for those things that have really thick stalks, even something like a brassica stalk, a hammer and a stone and beating that stalk will break up the fibres, which will greatly speed up the process of decomposition. Starting our pile, we need to use different layers. So here I'm using first layer of wood chips, which is a brown, and then we continue building up like a lasagna, layers of green, then brown, then green, all different products. Now, the more variety of ingredients you can add to your compost at this time, the better quality compost you're going to make. Every few layers we need to wet down this compost, and we use a garden hose or a watering can and give it a good soaking. Now, it's really important that you get that consistency of water right, and in my last compost video, which is up here, you will see that we talk all about the water content and why it's important in compost. We need to keep building the layers of our compost, and every few layers we want to add an activator to the compost. Now this can be in the form of your own garden soil, some worm castings, or even some of the compost out of this bin that we've just made previously, because all of that activator was going to have billions and billions of microbes and bacteria in, which will help to inoculate your compost and get it going really fast. When you reach the top of your compost bin, we need to give it another good soak. We don't want it absolutely drenched, but we do need to make sure it's completely moist right through. And then we need to cover it because we need to protect it from the rain. We don't want this getting any wetter than it is. A good rule of thumb is when you grab some of your compost, you can only squeeze out 2 drops of water. And that's it, that's your compost pile done. Now, your next job over the next few days is you need to check that the temperature is going to rise. And I'm just going to put this thermometer in there so that I know that it will rise. We now need to just ensure that this doesn't dry out. We need to keep it moist, and when it starts to cool down, we then need to turn this into the next bin to introduce more air, which will help it heat up again. After about 8 or 10 weeks, this is what you will get: homemade compost that will greatly improve your soil structure. You've heard me time and time again say, feed your soil, not your plants, and this is going to do that for you. By feeding your soil, you are feeding your plants, and that's because you have improved structure. You've added tons and tons of nutrients to that soil, but more importantly, you've increased water retention. And it's the very reason that when I was away from the garden for 8 weeks and my polytunnel had absolutely no water at all, it thrived and ended up like a jungle. Now, I know making compost at home, the whole process can seem daunting, but it is really as simple as I've just shown you. Yes, there's a lot of science behind it, but if you've tried making compost yourself and have had a failure, a stinking mess, or it just hasn't broken down, if you follow my videos, this one and the previous one, which will be at the end of this video for you, then you will be able to make your own compost at home and improve your soil quality. And now is the perfect time to make compost because our productive gardens are being harvested as we speak. We're pulling down all of this green material and we have more than we could ever want. So as the saying goes, make hay while the sun shines. Get down in your garden and make compost today. Don't put it off. Question of the day: do you make compost at home? And if you do you do anything different? Let's get the conversation started below and get all the answers down there. And I suggest every one of you go down and have a look at the comments, because that's where our collective knowledge is. I don't have all the answers, but you can bet that in the comments section someone has put that little golden nugget that would really help you along into making the perfect compost. Now you know how to make a compost pile from start to finish, and you're in charge of your own garden soil structure. If you've enjoyed this video, then you can subscribe here and share it with your friends. And if you're ready to know the science behind making compost, then view this video here. And as soon as you've done that, you'll be well on your way to being a pro at making your own compost at home. I'm Tony O'Neill, this is UK Year with Grow, and remember folks, you reap what you sow. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.